You are part of, and I hope I'm not speaking out of school, but you are part of the group that is going through determining the training for officers to deal with implementation of 1070.
That's correct. I did participate as one of them.
How difficult is this? How much more training is required? How big of a deal is this?
Well, first of all, we were able to build on a pre-existing work. This is not the first time. Long before this issue had come up, the then Attorney General, Janet Napolitano, we came out affirmatively, long before anyone decided, as an industry, that we wanted a component on racial profiling and bias policing. There was a work product that was done in 2001. We enhanced that, made sure that we re-emphasized it, but to more succinctly answer your question, Senate Bill 1070 did not redefine any of the definitions or components of reasonable suspicion or probable cause. All of the tenets to stop anybody in this country are exactly the same. Nothing has changed. Laws are promulgated each and every year at the state legislature. Our responsibility and duty as law enforcement officers is to find out what those are, find out the nuances of those enforcements, usually done by our legal and training units. Our officers are given a bolus of training, and then after that we implement those.
You're saying that this complicates an officer's job? Not at all.
I don't think it complicates it at all. First of all, we've already had the ability to do that. What this now does is, to some extent, create some affirmative responsibilities, but it also has a lot of very important caveats, ones you never hear. A reasonable attempt, when practicable, and then without being hidden in some back portion in small print, in the same sentence, it says, except if making that determination could hinder or obstruct your investigation.
You can call it off right then.
I can disengage.
In other words, if you're interviewing somebody who may be here illegally, but you need that information for your investigation into a murder or a car theft,
right,
you can say, you know what, I'm not going there on the issue of national origin because it's going to harm my investigation.
That's exactly what it means.
You have the right as an officer to call it off right then.
That's exactly what it means.
I don't think the public generally knows this. Why is that? Because
there are folks that don't want the public to know it. In the same fashion, in the way that they're picking out bits and pieces of the bill and trying to add this nefarious tone. I think it is unfortunate when we start mixing the emotional side of an argument that has really anytime you have to be on the business end of a law enforcement action is always a sad event. Mm-hmm. Police officers are not elated because we have to take enforcement action against any member of the public. But there are consequences for conduct. Sometimes those consequences even extend beyond the persons involved.
Back with Levi Bolton, lobbyist and consultant for the Police Law Enforcement Association, just back from a meeting with Attorney General Eric Holder on Newsmaker Sunday. Back on Newsmaker Sunday, talking about the implementation of SB 1070, Arizona's new immigration law, and Levi Bolton, who is a former Phoenix police officer, retired after 32 years on the force, who's now a lobbyist and consultant for the Police Law Enforcement Union, who just met with Attorney General Eric Holder in Washington, D.C. You believe this law will go into effect July 29th?
Yes. Well, let's put it this way. I'm hopeful that it will. I'm confident that there are going to be challenges. As a matter of fact, I know that there have been some challenges that have already been filed.
I think there are 5 legal challenges.
Exactly. But I have to be reliant on the research and the work that was done from the constitutional experts by the folks who crafted the bill. They wanted to make sure that there were sufficient stakeholders in the room that had the appropriate expertise. One of our contributions was the idea of building in discretion for police officers and line officers. But more importantly, was the idea that why reinvent the wheel? Mirror existing statute, that if you bankrupt the interpretation or the actual language that exists within the state component, then you're going to have some challenges to the federal provisions.
So in other words, it mirrors a federal law. And
in many extents.
Nobody can say that you're doing anything or overreaching.
Right.
The question, I guess, will be preemption, whether the state has the right to enforce what has been traditionally a federal issue, which is immigration.
That's correct.
Let me ask you what you're polling. This has been asked a lot. Does the union represent the rank and file officer?
Yes,
I know on the face it does, but what does your polling tell you about what rank and file officers believe about 1070, and do they want to enforce this?
Well, first of all, police officers are made of all shapes and sizes and packages, and I think we represent a good cross-section of folks out there, but we are also good soldiers. I don't necessarily have to agree with all the laws that I enforce, but we deliberately, before we even looked at this issue at all, we polled our officers twice, long before the bill was actually pen went to paper on 1070.
Asking them what?
If you had immigration enforcement tools, would that be something that you would prefer? In other words, the ability to contact your immigration partners if you have reasonable suspicion.
And what did the polling tell you?
The first poll came out with about 7 in 10. So 70% of our officers
want to do it.
Want to do it. And of the remaining, I have to mix in, well, I'm not sure, that's not something that I do. And then we had some that said no. And then we polled them again, and that was just before. That's now we're in the mix of actually testifying in both the House and the Senate here at the state level, and meeting with stakeholders to say, we're going to put our all into this. Let us know, is this something that is going to be useful? And at that point, I think it was 8.9 in 10. So almost.
Why does an officer want to be able to do this? What would be the main reason an officer would want that tool in the arsenal?
I don't know how we would have an explanation for this. Let's take, for example, let's take illegal.
We only got a minute.
Okay, let's take illegal immigration out of the way. Let's say the guy's on parole or probation, and I failed to check a guy's probation status, and he molested or raped your daughter, when I could have run a check, found out he was on probation, and where he would have been on the night of the offense would have been in jail.
This is a sensitive question, but do you believe that along with the good, hard-working people who come here just for a better life, that there are a lot of bad actors who are coming across that border?
Yes, this country was founded on immigrants. This is not an issue of immigration. It has to do with illegal immigration. Illegal immigration is not a race, it's conduct. It's a choice. Conduct is a choice. There are a lot of reasons for choices, so I'm not villainizing the choice. But it's naivety to say that bad things don't come across that border. We've had hand grenades, sophisticated weapons. Your news crews have covered these military life incursions. The battlefields are coming into our neighborhoods, and now you want to take away some of the tools, or at least challenge the tools for local law enforcement.
Levi Bolden, thank you. Pleasure. Good seeing you again. Lobbyist and consultant for PLEA, the Police Law Enforcement Association, after a meeting with Attorney General Eric Holder. Fresh back. Thank you for being here on Newsmaker Sunday.